Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yunxiao's face darkened as he cried out angrily, "Auntie Shen. What are you saying? However, after eating your martial Wildao fruits, I'm deliberately looking for trouble. Is this your personal idea or Lady Qing Luo's idea?" With an angry expression, he said "Humph. If you can't bear to, then don't take it out for others to eat." So she was just putting on an act, what member of the 7 merchant alliances, poor bastard. He took out a bag of primeval stone fragments and threw it on the table. He snorted coldly at most, "I'll pay some money. I only have so few primeval stones on me. I'll give them all to you." Qing Luo's face turned red and white. She was a person who cared about her face the most. Otherwise, she would not have collected some martial Wildao fruits as decorations to show off her status. When she heard Yunxiao call her poor bastard, she looked as if she had been greatly insulted, and her eyes spewed fire as she glared at Shenli. "You're so silly." Shenli was exasperated. She knew that Yunxiao was trying to change the topic, but Qing Luo could see that her face was already very unkind, so she said in a hurry, "Lady Qing Luo, this brat is really cowardly." "I understand, Auntie Shen." Yunxiao spoke first, his eyes cold as he said, "I understand what you're trying to do. Back in the Lightsong Woodland, you seem to have signed a benefit agreement with our rookie mercenary group. Let me see if I have it with me. I can also let Lady Qing Luo have a look." When Shenli heard that, her body trembled violently as if she was touched. She looked at Yunxiao with a frightened and pleading look. The agreement signed in the west of the city had basically betrayed Empyrean One Pavilion's interests, but the situation had forced them to sign it, and they would have been dead if they hadn't. The 4 chambers of commerce had all signed the contract, so she couldn't be blamed. But now, Yunxiao had brought it up alone, and if he were to exaggerate it, Qing Luo would probably be scared to death on the spot. Qing Luo was puzzled. "What agreement?" Yunxiao touched his storage ring and said, "I'll look around." "Oh right, Auntie Shen, what did you say I really did?" Shenli's face was pale, and she said, "You're really inexperienced. It's just 20 or so martial Wildao fruits. Empyrean One Pavilion can take them out at any time. We don't need to pay for them." Qing Luo's heart twitched when she heard the words "more than 20 martial Wildao fruits." She forced a smile and said, "That's right. The Cloud Sky City Lord is young and promising. Those Dao fruits can be considered a meeting gift." The people from the Temple of Holy Fire were dumbfounded. More than 20 martial Wildao fruits were a gift to them. They also felt strange. Qing Luo was clearly burning with anger and almost couldn't control it. How could she suppress it? Was it just to chase after the skeleton mercenary group? Logically speaking, there was no need for that. With these people's methods, they could directly capture them and they would be able to get some information. As expected, Qing Luo quickly asked carefully, "The Cloud Heaven City Lord's amazing performance in Yanwu has shocked the world. Even Martial Emperor Tianqin, Li Huaqi, has come out to support you. I wonder what's the relationship between the Cloud Heaven City Lord and Lord Li Huaqi." What? He actually knew Li Huaqi? He even has Li Huaqi to back him up? Everyone in the Temple of Holy Fire changed their expressions, all of them horrified. Even though they were from a reclusive sect, even a 3-year-old child had heard of the 10 great martial sovereigns in the streets and alleys. They looked at Yunxiao with a different expression. Yunxiao sneered in his heart and thought, "I'm not going to let you go." So that's what happened. I was wondering why he could still endure it when he had become a ninja turtle. He revealed a look of admiration and bragged, "Li Huaqi is my big cousin." What? Qing Luo was dumbfounded. She looked Yunxiao up and down and said in disbelief, "Big cousin? The Lord of Cloud Sky City is less than 20 years old, and Lord Li Huaqi has been famous for decades. The age gap is huge, and I've never heard of Li Huaqi having a younger cousin or something like that." Yunxiao was unhappy as he mumbled, "Does my cousin have any relatives that he needs to report to you?" Qing Luo felt a wave of dizziness, and she didn't know if it was true or not. The intelligence department of the Merchant Union was the best in the world. They had detailed records of all the experts on the heavenly martial continent, including their connections and relatives. All kinds of information about the 10 martial emperors and the sect leaders of the 7 major forces had been gathered in his mind and could be mentioned at any time, but he had never heard that Li Huaqi had a cousin. She probed. Li Huaqi is an eccentric and unsociable man. He rarely interacts with others. Are you a relative of his late lover, Shui Chenxi? Yunxiao's pupils constricted, and his face was filled with shock. What? A deceased lover? Shui Chenxi was dead. How did she die? Shui Chenxi was the goddess that Li Huaqi had been secretly in love with for a long time, and she was also the holy maiden of the Feiyang Holy Palace. It was a pity that Li Huaqi had feelings for her, while Shui Chenxi was dedicated to the ultimate of martial arts. For this reason, Li Huaqi once lived outside Thousand Leaves Island, playing the zither and writing ancient books every day. Even after 10 years, he still couldn't move Shui Chenxi. He only left after the ranking battle of the Heaven and Earth Power Chart. Shui Chenxi had also won the title of the world's #1 ice-hearted beauty. It was said that Li Huaqi had attended the Heaven and Earth Power Chart gathering because he had been provoked by Shui Chenxi. He wanted to win the title of #1 in the world and win the beauty. However, things didn't go as they wished. These arrogant powerhouses who thought they were invincible in the world only realized that there was always someone better in the world after the Holy Region ranking battle. Even with his cultivation at the peak of the 9 heavens, he only managed to get 5th place. As for the experts of the various forces, the sect leaders of the major sects, and countless reclusive experts, they were even more embarrassed and ranked far behind. Fortunately, the sect leaders of the 7 superpowers did not participate in this ranking battle. This kind of ranking battle was known by the whole world, so they really could not afford to lose face. It was said that after the ranking battle, Li Huaqi felt too ashamed to return to Thousand Leaves Island and disappeared from the mainland. It was not until the news of Shui Chenxi's death spread that there was another bloodbath. He couldn't figure it out. The holy maiden of the Feiyang Holy Palace, the woman Li Huaqi loved the most, who else in the world could kill her? Qing Luo's face was filled with astonishment as she said, "You didn't know that Shui Chenxi was dead?" She frowned, as if she was very suspicious of Yunxiao's identity. But, Shui Chenxi's death was known to the world, and it was not a secret to ordinary warriors. How could he not know? Moreover, in Yanwu, Li Huaqi had indeed threatened to protect him. As for the cause of death, the Empyrean One Pavilion did have some information, but it was absolutely confidential. Shui Chenxi has been dead for almost 10 years. 10 years of regret. Yunxiao was stunned. 10 years ago, he was still a child, arrogant and domineering in the capital of Tianshui, so how could he know about the major events in the world? A desolate look flashed in his eyes as he sighed and said, "No wonder he's living in seclusion in the southern domain, Tianxiang. I remember that Shui Chenxi was from Tianxiang." Qing Luo's heart skipped a beat, and she saw the desolation on Yunxiao's face. It was not an act, but a melancholy and loneliness from the bottom of his heart. It seemed that this kid was really related to Li Huaqi, but it was strange that he did not know that Shui Chenxi was dead. Let's not talk about these unhappy things. Since Shui Chenxi's death, Li Huaqi had not shown his face again. The first time in 10 years had been in Yanwu. I wonder if he has recovered from his grief. Qing Luo stared at Yunxiao's eyes, trying to find some clues from them, but to her surprise, she found nothing. No matter how powerful her divine sense was, she could not detect even the slightest emotional fluctuation from him. I know my cousin's recent situation very well, Yunxiao said with a faint smile. We often exchange letters. Qing Luo was taken aback. She had also understood Yunxiao's meaning, which was that she knew about Li Huaqi's situation, but why should she tell him? She suddenly realized that this kid was not as simple as she had thought. She thought about how Shenli had said that he was a scheming person, but he was somewhat like this. However, she still didn't take it to heart. She thought to herself, what can a child do? Our Empyrean One Pavilion has something that we would like to ask Lord Li Huaqi for help. As for the reward, as long as Lord Li Huaqi is willing to give it, we can afford it. The only ones who boasted like this were the four core alliances. If they couldn't afford the reward in the world, no other force could. Yunxiao looked enlightened. So, you have something to ask me. No wonder you have such a good attitude. I was puzzled for a while. He immediately put on airs and snorted, reward? When we were in the Gentle Song Forest, I helped you deal with the Four Extreme sect. Where's the promised reward, the 9 evils of the heavens water of the netherworld? Qing Luo was stunned for a moment. Then, she smiled and said, Shenli has told me about this before. However, our agreement was to capture Tang Jia alive. I don't think Yunxiao has fulfilled his promise, right? Yunxiao's eyes bulged as he said angrily, in order to help you, I have completely broken off my relationship with the Four Extreme sect. When that time comes, I will have to hide from their pursuit no matter where I go. Even if there was no credit, there should be hard work, right? Even if you don't give me a bucket of the water of the netherworld, you can at least give me 1 or 2 bottles. 1 or 2 bottles of Kasaya. Qing Luo laughed awkwardly. You must be joking, Lord Yunxiao Sky City. The water of the netherworld of the 9 evils is evolved from the source of all water. Any drop of it is worth an astronomical amount. Not to mention the Empyrean One Pavilion, even the entire Merchant Union might not be able to provide 1 or 2 bottles. As for breaking off with the Four Extremes sect, that's even more ridiculous. You killed Tang Yuan in Mount Meru and that's the end of the relationship. Yunxiao sneered. My cousin's reward is 1 or 2 bottles of the 9 evils of the heavens water of the netherworld. If you don't have them, then there's no need to talk about it. Qing Luo suppressed the anger in her heart and said calmly, Yunxiao Sky City Lord, please don't joke around. This is a very important matter, and it will be of great benefit to both my Empyrean One Pavilion and Lord Li Huaqi. I'll have to trouble you to convey my Empyrean One Pavilion's good intentions. Yunxiao knew that he could not make a scene anymore. The other party seemed to have reached his bottom line, and it would not be good for anyone if he continued to play and shed all pretense of cordiality. In this demon land, he still had to rely on this big tree. He chuckled and said, all right, I'll definitely pass on this matter to Big Cousin. Is there anything else, Lady Qing Luo? If not, then we won't disturb you any further and will take our leave. Qing Luo took out a storage bag and placed it in front of Yunxiao, saying here are 10 million medial-grade primordial stones as a reward for passing on the message. If the matter is successful, there will be more rewards. She also realized that this person was a ruffian. If she didn't give him some benefits, he wouldn't work hard. Only Shenli's eyelids twitched. She knew that the 10 million mid-grade primordial stones were definitely wasted, but she did not dare to say anything. Yunxiao was flattered, and his face was filled with greed. However, in Qing Luo's eyes, she was laughing coldly. Shenli sighed and shook her head. This kid was too good at pretending. If she had not experienced what happened in Qingxi, she would never believe that this teenager could have such a deep mind. Qing Luo was very satisfied with Yunxiao's expression. She smiled and said, let's talk about the important matters now. Which direction did the skeleton mercenaries go? Yunxiao accepted the primordial stones with joy, then said we can provide the location and ensure that we can find it. If the Noah's ship really appears, how will we distribute it? Qing Luo laughed and said, how do we split Noah's ship? The Lord of Cloud Sky City must be joking. Not to mention that the probability of Noah's ship appearing is close to 0, even if a mayfly does appear. She looked at the people of the Temple of Holy Fire with disdain and sneered, just based on you guys, do you think you can obtain it? Yunxiao sighed, that's right, that's why we, the rookie mercenary group, don't plan to fight for Noah's ship. However, it's fine to help your sect search for it and collect some benefits. He took out a piece of paper and quickly wrote a list. He handed it to Qing Luo and said, these materials, just take it as a benefit fee. Qing Luo took a quick glance and was shocked. She threw the list of ingredients on the table and slammed it down with her palm, saying angrily, a Cloud Sky City Lord, are you deliberately causing trouble? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because Li Huaqi is your cousin. There were all kinds of treasures inside, and there were even 30 low-level martial intent Dao fruits. This is too much. She was so angry that her eyes were almost spewing fire. She had completely lost her composure. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire were all shocked and looked at each other in horror. Other treasures aside, these 30 martial will Dao fruits were really amazing. Yunxiao did not take it seriously, as if he had expected this reaction. He smiled and said, Lady Qingluo, don't be so agitated. Although those low-level martial will Dao fruits are hard to find, your sect definitely has a lot in stock. Compared to Noah's ship, which one is more precious? If you hand over Noah's ship with both hands, I'd be willing to pay 100 times the price of these materials, Qingluo laughed in anger. But just pointing out the way and giving such a ridiculous price, do you think that you can do whatever you want just because you have a powerful big cousin? Yunxiao looked at her and chuckled. Lady Qingluo, you can tell this to my cousin personally later. What do you mean? Qingluo asked with a frown. She was shocked and cried out in horror, what? You mean Lord Li Huaqi will come to the demon land? This shout startled everyone in the room. They were all shocked. Yunxiao shrugged, spread his hands, and said, I don't know. I just told Big Cousin that Noah's ship might be born and Big Cousin said he would come and see it when he has time. Qingluo's face turned extremely unsightly. Yunxiao's words were vague, and the truth was unclear, but they were extremely important, which made it extremely difficult for her to deal with them. Yunxiao sneered in his heart and let them make wild guesses. In any case, he had come to a perfect conclusion, and if Li Huaqi did not come, it would mean that he was not free. Qingluo paced back and forth in the room, deep in thought. Shenli sighed softly. She was 99% sure that it was fake, but she did not dare to say it out loud. Not to mention that Yunxiao had something on her, she could not bear the responsibility if Li Huaqi really came and affected the overall situation. Qingluo sat back in front of the oval-shaped table and said cautiously, Lord of Cloud Sky City, I think we should be honest with each other and have a good talk. Yunxiao pointed at the list of materials and said, you have to show your sincerity, there's no proof. Qingluo's anger rushed to her head. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to control herself and would slap the other party to death. She gritted her teeth and said to Li Yunxiao, you've gone too far. Even if Li Huaqi really came, he couldn't have given you so many things. Yunxiao's list was full of heavenly materials and earthly treasures that could directly increase one's primordial qi, and the one thing he did not lack the least was martial arts comprehension. As long as he accumulated enough primordial qi, he could directly advance. This was the situation after swallowing more than 20 martial will Dao fruits. These lists were all heaven and earth treasures that were relatively easy to find, and they had calculated that Empyrean One Pavilion would be able to provide them, but now it seemed that they had exceeded their bottom line by a lot. Rustle, rustle, rustle. He picked up a pen and thought for a moment. Then, he crossed out some and pushed it to Qingluo. After reading it, Qingluo tore off more than half of the paper and threw it back to Yunxiao. This is all I can give you. I can't give you any more grass or leaves. This is not enough to fill the gaps between my teeth, Yunxiao said with a frown. It's not even enough to break through to 1 star. Qingluo sneered and said, you're only a 2 stars martial grandmaster. After you consume these things, you'll be able to advance to the 4 stars level at least in terms of Yuan Qi. During this period, you only need to try your best to comprehend the martial Dao concept. The people from the Temple of Holy Fire and Shenli were stunned. Tearing up more than half of it could actually allow a martial grandmaster to advance 3 levels. One could only imagine how heaven-defying the list was. Qingluo didn't kill him with a single strike. It seemed like this woman had a very mild temper. Yunxiao, on the other hand, felt bitter in his heart. The primordial qi he needed to advance was much more than that of ordinary warriors. If he swallowed all these natural treasures, it was estimated that they would only be enough for him to advance from peak 2 star to 3 star. Moreover, it was still useful to consume natural treasures now. However, when he became a martial emperor, the vital qi would not be enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. He didn't have any confidence in how he would advance in the future. Alright, even a mosquito's leg is meat, deal. He knew that he wouldn't be able to get any more benefits no matter how unreasonable he was. He had already broken Qing Luo's bottom line. Mosquito legs. Qing Luo really wanted to slap him to death. She threw the list to Shenli and said angrily, "Can you tell me now? You've wasted so much time. If you can't catch Tang Jia, don't even think about getting a blade of grass." "Don't be so impatient," Yunxiao chuckled. "Tang Jia is now the apple of everyone's eye. No matter how big Demon Plain is, he will be dug out. Other than the Empyrean One Pavilion, I think the other forces in the Merchant Union have also come in, right? It might not be a bad thing for us to be slower. Look at the Flying Frost sect, they were too arrogant, so the ship was destroyed and everyone died." He then pointed in the direction Yifan sensed Noah's ship and said, "I suggest Lady Qing Luo to hide this battleship in the void and move forward slowly." Qing Luo was also hesitant as she said, "If I hide in the void, not only will I use up hundreds of primordial stones, but my speed will also be extremely slow. If I delay things, I will bear too much responsibility." Yunxiao looked at her and said with a smile, "But only God knows how many Oriole are behind the mantis." The key was to have the last laugh. "Of course, I'm just giving you a suggestion out of goodwill." His real thought was that he didn't want the Empyrean One Pavilion to die so early. Tang Jia was like a cicada now. Who knew how many eyes were on him? If he rushed into the center of the whirlpool at this time, he would undoubtedly be courting death. Qing Luo wasn't a fool. After thinking for a while, she ordered the entire warship to hide in the void and move forward. Although the cost was huge, it was insignificant compared to the mission this time. She glanced at Yunxiao and the others and said with a smile, "The Demon Plain is too dangerous now. Please stay on this starship. Empyrean One Pavilion can ensure your safety. Shenli, bring them to the guest room." Qing Luo's purpose was to imprison them, and she might have some use for them. After all, the rookie mercenary group was not a small force, and if Li Huaqi really came to the Demon Land, he could be a trump card to make friends with. Everyone in the Temple of Holy Fire became cautious, as if they felt something was wrong. If they were under the control of Empyrean One Pavilion, they would have no chance. Yunxiao gave them a look, and only then did everyone feel a little relieved. Soon, Shenli brought them to a large guest room, which was specially provided for warriors. There were no extra furniture such as beds, but the space in the square was enough for cultivation. At their level, they no longer needed to sleep. Moreover, there was a gravity adjustment device in the cultivation place, and the strongest one could withstand 10,000 times the gravity. There were more than 10,000 high-grade origin stones on both sides, and they emitted thick origin energy. They were also for the guests' cultivation. The cost of each netherworld battleship was terrifying, and the various installations inside were also extremely luxurious. Therefore, even though Xianbing was a 3-star Marshal Supreme, he could not return to the sect after losing one of his battleships. After Shenli sent everyone in, she stood at the door and said, "Cloud Sky City Lord, can you return that contract to me?" Yunxiao stared at her, and his eyes immediately turned cold as he said in a cold voice, "Return it to you? Auntie Shen, you're trying to harm me. Is there something wrong with my brain? I'll return that thing to you? I swear I won't say anything that I shouldn't." Shenli gritted her teeth. Yunxiao leaned forward and smiled. "Of course, I can't say what I shouldn't say. There may be a lot of things that I need you to say later." He whispered in Shenli's ear, and Shenli's expression changed. She shook her head in horror and said, "No, this won't do. I'll really die without a burial place." "I won't force you, Auntie Shen," Yunxiao said coldly. "But don't even think about taking the contract away. Also, you should be more aware of the current situation in the Demon Land than I am. Let alone you and me, it's a problem if Qing Luo can even leave this place. I can promise that if my big cousin comes, I will definitely ask him to save your life."